Whoa, there we go. Welcome to the fine print, ladies and gentlemen. I am your host, Caleb Teskey, and today we got a great interview coming up for you. Before we get into that, as usual, I want to send a few shout outs to a few of my friends and to everybody who watched the last interview. And all my previous interviews. Man, we had a really good interview with Charles Alkire, a former U.S. Army veteran. We had a great interview with Jason Stefano, a former U.S. Marine who served almost 20 years with the NYPD. We had a great interview with Tim McBride, the saltwater cowboy from Florida, who was a drug smuggler, a cannabis smuggler. I don't want to say it like that. Yeah. And we also had a great interview with Rusty Tapp from Kama'aina Gold in Hawaii. And I want to thank all those people for appearing here on my show. I also want to do a shameless plug from my man Mike Salvati at Fierce Cultivation with the peanut butter bread. Mike, I'm psyched to see you next week at the Headies, man. Today we got a great interview, and this is going to be something a little bit off the beaten path for me. This is not something I normally talk about, but I've connected with this woman on Instagram, and I really like what she has to say. We're gonna pop her in right now. Let's do this. Bam! It's Stacey Watrobski. Stacey, how are you? Thank you for being.
I'm so good. Thank you for having me on.
That's
Appreciate you, Caleb.
Yeah. Before we get into anything serious, would you mind sharing your 5-minute life story with us?
Oh shit! Wish I was prepared for that one. Okay, so I guess let's start at the cannabis side of things. Well, let's go back a little further. So I was in hospitality for like 18 years. I went to college at Temple University in Philadelphia and moved back here to Michigan, where I grew up. Finished college up here, and there were not a lot of good jobs at all. So I continued in hospitality, and when cannabis became legal medically and then recreationally, I grew. I was a registered caregiver here in the state of Michigan, which allows you to grow up to 5 or up to 72 plants. And long story long, I ended up getting raided and arrested. And also couldn't find a job for a while. So as soon as things went recreational here in Michigan, it was at the beginning of COVID, and I got a job as a bud tender at a dispensary in Hazel Park, Michigan called New Standard. And very quickly things started to go awry. And I spearheaded a unionization effort with my coworkers, and the union busted, and it worked. And I then trained to be an organizer with the union that we were trying to unionize with, which is the UFCW, Hemp and Cannabis International. And I talked to cannabis workers all over the country. And those conversations led to the very realization that the issues that I saw and that my coworkers saw were not just issues that we were facing uniquely. These issues were happening all over the country. And at that point, I just kind of said, all right, I need to shit or get off the pot here. And so I went kind of full heads on into activism and trying to bring real awareness and standards to the industry to protect workers and, force these corporations to fulfill the promises of good jobs and opportunity that they sold us all on.
Can I stop you for a second, Stacey? You said you said you've been busted for cannabis before. Could you tell us about that if you're comfortable?
Sure. So this was back in 2017. I was at a facility with just a couple other people. We were a collective of caregivers, and I was, kind of becoming the one of the main growers there, training to be anyway. And we were under the impression that we were getting told from the investors that, we were this close to being licensed, right? So might as well just get things up and running. And long story long, the Detroit city. So thank God it was the city of Detroit. It wasn't the state. It wasn't like the FBI or anything.
I love a long story too. So
right. Yeah. I think we all got a long stories here. That's for sure. You and I, Caleb, could talk for a long time. But Anyway, the city of Detroit came in and raided one day. I was standing there working on the plants. I just listened to the radio, and it was myself and one other person that we worked with, and we started. I felt this like banging on the floor, and it was, I could tell it was like in a sequence. It wasn't just random. And I turned off my radio, and I told the other person that was, I was working with. I was like, just be quiet for a minute. And sure enough, there was like these three huge booms, and it turned out that they were using a battering ram on the front door. And they broke in and came in, AK-47s and, in the full stack. I'm on the ground. And they came in, and one of the first things these cops were saying, they're like, "Where's the guns and where's the money?" And I'm like, there are no guns and there are no money here. There is no money here. Like, this is what we thought was a legal establishment, which is against the law to have those things. They were pretty pissed that they couldn't find any money, but I ended up,
no money, Stacey.
Was that?
No money.
No money. No money. They found $27 between me and the other guy. They were like,
Wow.
"There's only $27 here." I'm like, "Yeah."
What a great bust.
What's that?
What a great bust.
Right. Exactly. They definitely didn't find what they were looking for, but it definitely fucked my record up. And it fucked with the other person that, was there at the time too. I don't necessarily feel comfortable telling his portion of the story, but, with mine, I took
please don't. Yeah, please don't. If yeah.
Right.
How old were you when that happened, Stacey?
Shit. When was 2017? 32. Maybe I'm 37 now. So I was like 32.
So 5 years ago ish.
Yeah. The rate-iversary was just in April. It was like April 6th or something like that. But that was another, my history really does reflect what the struggle of, like, our generation of Americans is going through, and also the struggle that what happens when you get something on your record, how fucking difficult it is to find work, especially if it's drug related. So you're being put on probation, right? For whatever it might be. And part of your stipulation of probation is to hold a job. Now, what if, then that charge that's on your record is keeping you from getting a job? It is so fucked up. I couldn't even get a job at Kroger, and I have a degree, I mean, it doesn't mean anything anymore.
What's your degree in, Stacey?
Philosophy. I studied philosophy with an emphasis in pre-law and a minor in women's studies.
No shit. Okay. Well, at what college?
At Temple University in Philadelphia and Oakland University in Rochester Hills, Michigan.
Okay, cool.
Yeah. It's much ado about nothing. My degree just pretty much taught me to ask a lot of questions and just keep asking questions. So, I don't know if it's typically like very practical, but here we are.
Well, I have a physics degree that's sitting in the closet collecting dust. So
that's fucking cool. What?
Yeah.
Caleb, look at all this potential we got sitting right here.
Yeah. Well, don't remind me.
Right.
This interview is about you, Stacey, not about me. No.
Okay. Fine. If you say so. But yeah, so that's how that arrest went. And here we are 5 years later. I thought that getting into the license side of things, after going through that, it was like, I'm sick of looking over my shoulder. Yes, I agree that this, plant should be legal and we shouldn't have to do that. And, it was a lot of trauma. So I'm like, sweet, moving over to the license side. This is going to be perfect. The way that they sell it to us is you can be anything in this industry. It's brand new. You're going to invent your own, your own job. You're going to find your own path.
For people who don't know where you're at and haven't recognized your accent, could you tell them where you're at?
I didn't know I had an accent, but isn't that what everybody says? I am in Michigan, Southeast Michigan, Detroit area.
Can I just put a comment from, I think this is my mom. Does your state offer expungements?
Yes, they do. So there was actually a bill that went through last year. It was called the Clean Slate Law, or the Clean Slate Bill, and it would allow. It's supposed to be that misdemeanor marijuana charges or convictions will be automatically expunged. I don't necessarily know how well that will work because you have to rely on the state for it. But there's also really great organizations here in Michigan too. One of them is the Great Lakes Expungement Network, and they raise a fuck ton of money. And all they do is just expunge people's records all day for free, like service from beginning to end. So yes, there is a lot of possibility for it. I was lucky that after I completed my probation, my not lucky, but my because I had nothing else on my record, it was something called 7411 eligible. So it pretty much gets buried. It doesn't even come up when you do a background check.
No
But
shit.
yeah, I don't know if that can help or hurt me if I ever want to try to apply for social equity, but
Hey, mom, don't tell anyone about that.
right.
Thanks, mom. I love you.
Thanks. Oh, was it? What's your name? Pam?
Panda suit. Here, I'll pop it back up one more time. That's that. That's my mom.
Oh, hi, Panda Sue. Thank
She's a
you for the
wonderful
question.
woman.
And
Yeah.
yeah, that's because that is so huge. Expungements are such the fact that we're not at the point of just getting all these marijuana convictions completely wiped off is a big sign of a much bigger issue, because why would you get rid of all that cheap labor in prisons?
And my mom works for restorative justice here in Vermont. So that's what she does, is that they help people that are coming out of jail reintegrate and sort of, like I don't want to say drug court, but sometimes people are referred to them. Hey, here, we got another comment. I'm gonna put that up there. Bang.
Okay.
I help people expunge their records as part of my job. Yeah. So yeah, that's been interesting for me as a person to watch her doing that, and also as
Right.
someone who's also gone through the criminal justice system. It's been a valuable resource to have my mom know that shit.
Right. Seriously. Like that's one hell of a connection. You don't want to have to use it, but here we are.
Yo, I want to ask you about, because we talked about this on the phone, and you said your area of expertise was sort of in sort of or maybe this is just my notes, but it says criminal justice reform and expungement, and you volunteered at expungement events.
I did. I volunteered at a few. I helped organize a few. It's not my area of expertise, but that is the worker side of things for sure. But I'm definitely passionate about expungement and our ability to move forward in our lives when things might go awry. And especially when it comes to cannabis, if there are companies, if this is a billion-dollar industry, because it already is in like one state alone, then there's no reason that people need to be still paying for the failed war on drugs.
Hmm. A multi-billion-dollar industry, I would say.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes, much better put, my friend.
Yeah, and I want to ask you, because one of the things that really you got my attention with when we spoke was talking about sort of labor relations, and I put that in the I put that in the title of this because that's something I haven't spoke with anyone about yet, and your comments on this seemed really insightful, and I'd like to. It sounded like you also had some history on American labor relations, and I'd really love to dig into that with you. That's really I think going to be the bulk of this interview, and I think that would be some hot shit to touch on. Please, Stacey.
For sure.
Yeah.
So, here's a good place to start. So, when I worked at the dispensary, New Standard, prior to us,
Where's New Standard?
it is in Hazel Park, Michigan.
Thank you.
They started as a medical dispensary, and very quickly, through their connections, were able to get a recreational license. And while I was there, and it was myself that had spearheaded the unionization effort, but also this isn't, it isn't just one person that's unionizing. It is the whole staff. Some people push and pull more than others, but I was definitely targeted. I had a target on my back. I did not hide the fact that I was, I was pushing this. I definitely made it known. And there was a target on my back because of it. So I ended up getting fired. And this was after the union busted. This was after, it worked. I was there. So the effort ended up failing in middle of September of 2020, and I was fired in January of 2021.
Why do you feel like a target was on your back, Stacey?
Because a lot of these companies, and not all, but most, do not want unions involved. When a union gets involved, there's a lot of debate about why businesses are anti-union, but one of them is because you have to give up your money and give it to the workers, and you need to actually come to the table with the people that you're hiring, and invest in the things that are good for your workers. And with cannabis, as we're seeing now, that there are a lot more, not just rumors, but cases popping up of bribery right here in Michigan. There was a bribery case with the House Speaker, representative, or not representative, but last name is Johnson. And, he took money from somebody that took money from somebody, and it was all in exchange for medical licenses, right? So when you're taking money from weird places, and that's just the tip of the iceberg, you probably don't want people to find out where that money is coming from. So one of my theories is that, these businesses definitely don't even want you to get to the point where they would have to open up their books. So squash it now. I was very loud. And whenever, there is a union effort, whoever the leaders are the ones that will be targeted. When you have influence, you will be targeted. And so the way I was targeted was that, so I was hired as a bud tender, right? And you have bud tenders.
Where at, Stacey? If you don't mind me asking.
Where at, like, this was at the dispensary in Hazel Park.
Yeah. What, will you care to name it?
Oh yeah, it's called A New Standard.
Okay, cool.
It's literally what the place is called, is New Standard. Yep.
Cool. Thank you.
And so I was hired as a bud tender, and after we had filed with the National Labor Relations Board to go to a union vote, during that time, there's a 30-day period between the time that you file, your workplace files with the National Labor Relations Board, to the time that you get to vote about whether or not you want to go on to the next step with unionizing. It's not just, you're not just boom all of a sudden in a union. There are several steps to get there.
Would you care to describe the steps for us, Stacey?
Yeah, I'll give it kind of a brief overview, because it does get really sticky, and I don't want you to lose sight of the general gist of it. But what you do is, if you're interested in unionizing or just organizing your workplace, start talking to your coworkers about what your qualms are in the workplace. Start talking about your pay. Start talking about your benefits. Once you get people on board, what you do is you contact a union, an already existing union, or this is a whole other process, but you can create your own union. That takes longer, but as we're seeing with Amazon, Starbucks, there is a lot to gain from starting your own union, a new union.
Sure.
But I digress. So contact a union. You all fill out union cards, which all this card does is you just have your name, your address in it, and you check a box that says, yes, I want to, I choose the Teamsters or whatever as an example to, represent my coworkers and I for a collective bargaining agreement. You turn that card in, all your cards get turned in, you get lined up with a vote date, which is generally 30 days after you and your coworkers file with the NLRB. During that 30-day time period is when the most union busting occurs. Some places will start prior to even any NLRB thing being filed. But that 30-day period from the time you file to the time of your vote date is when all hell breaks loose.
Can you, for some of my viewers that might not understand what union busting is, could you maybe break that down for us a little bit, Stacey?
Yes, yes. So what
Please.
union busting is a very high paid profession. And I'm talking, $500 an hour. And what these people do, they're hired to do, is come in and divide the staff, and convince them that the union is not going to do what they think it's going to do. It is essentially beating you down. It is mental battering. It is beating down this group of people to the point where they give up. That is what union busting is. It is convincing you that everything that you thought about, you needing extra money for a savings account. No, you don't, because we can do it together as a company. It is 100,000% anti-union propaganda. There are some facts thrown in there, but it's against the law for them to tell you lies, but they do it anyway. Union busting can look like a bunch of different things. For instance, they will start. So at my job, or my former job, it started with them hiring a union buster. It technically started with the CEO doing a mandatory Zoom meeting for all the staff that we had to tune into, so they could tell us that they were hiring a vice president of retail, and that if we had any questions about the union and how unionization works, that managers and this new vice president of retail will be there to answer any of our questions and really educate us on what the union really does. And what that was captive audience meetings. What a captive audience meeting is when we had these, we would get calendar invites sent to us. And even if it was your day off, it didn't matter. You had to show up at a separate location outside of the workplace.
Mandatory.
And what's that?
Mandatory shit while you're on your day off.
Yes, exactly. Mandatory union busting shit. So they're called captive audience meetings, and they are done strategically. So the way that they break up the staff in, so there's certain people in the same room that don't like each other, that maybe don't agree with each other. There's a lot of psychology that's involved with this. And as soon as you recognize that, as like, and I'm saying this to people that are maybe thinking about unionizing, their playbook has been the same since the 70s. If you are prepared and understand what to expect, this won't phase you. But I didn't know, and we did not have resources. Nobody was talking about it like they are right now. This conversation, you can't find many places on the internet. It wasn't until Amazon workers and Starbucks workers started taking things off in that sector that now we're seeing more talk about what union busting really is. So, captive audience meetings was just one thing. They would put up posters. There was a poster on the stall inside the women's bathroom on the back of the door, in brand with the company's logo on it, that said, "We can do this together, vote no." Those things are technically illegal, but nobody is. All it is a fine.
That's the anti unionization poster, is we can do this together, even though
Right.
unionization is sort of like, we can do this together, and then that
It's very psychologically, it mind fuck you, and especially if because the education of what unions are has been significantly stifled, and what we've generally been fed about unions has been, there's truth to everything, right? But is a fuck ton of propaganda. We see that the decline of unions has also brought about the low wages that we're experiencing. The fact that everything has moved up in price, but wages have stayed the same, also goes on par with the fact that there is lower union representation in America. This isn't a cannabis unique problem. This is a American labor problem, and the cannabis industry has the opportunity unlike other industries right now, which obviously if something is already in place, it's a lot hard to undo it. We're in this situation where we don't have to be fucking people this way. That we can lead by example and show that you can be profitable, and maybe you're scaling a little bit differently, but that everybody can win. You know, people aren't asking for all expenses paid trips to Hawaii. They're asking for, like, I don't know, a savings account, enough to be able to fucking go on vacation or put their kid into T-ball. You
Yeah.
know, like it's
Feed,
these things
feed,
aren't big
feed their
asks.
family.
Yeah, feed their fucking family.
Crazy.
Exactly. These aren't selfish things. These are
In,
necessary things. And these are things
insane.
that need to be
How
mutually
dare you?
beneficial.
How dare
Sorry.
you feed your family? Yeah. No, you're absolutely right though. I'm glad you said that. I mean, and it seems like a lot of the regulations sort of kind of paint you into a corner where you're very tight on margins in an industry where, like, yo, if you stayed in the black market, it almost seems like you might have made more money.
Yeah, and that was done again by design, you know? It was to entice a lot of people to, you know, throw their life savings into this, and it was the intent to drive prices down, to put them out of business, and you're not just putting them out of business, you're putting them out of their fucking livelihood because you said, "Hey, it's a free market," you know? And it's not, it's not. The barrier to entry was set so fucking high to begin with. It was meant for, you know, a very few amount of people to come in and participate. So what we're seeing is those people where they made their millions and billions in whatever respective industry that they came from, that they are now coming into cannabis and they're bringing their bad labor practices along with them. That is the number one thing that they're bringing along with them. The low pay, the exploitation of workers, but and it isn't just the frontline workers. This isn't just bud tenders, cultivators, processors. This is you know, people in the corporate level as well
Even
too.
the management shit.
Yeah, like general managers, district managers that, you know, I'm hearing like, yeah, I came from, you know, the let's call, I don't know, let's call it fucking Eddie Bauer, right? Like, you know, I worked at Eddie Bauer for 10 years. I did blah, 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 blah. You know, I was sick of it. I came over to cannabis and I took a pay cut because they told me about all this opportunity and it was a shit show. And I ended up making $40,000 less than I did at my last job. And it wasn't anything what I thought it was going to be. Those stories are, you know, just as big as the people making $13.75. You know, union busting is a very costly investment for a company.
Yo, and look,
And
Stacey, that's one thing you said on the phone was the amount of money that they spend on this. Could you elaborate on that for a minute?
sure. So union busters, they're not just, you can't just go online and like be like hire a union buster. What you want to look up is labor relations consultant. Union busters are calling themselves labor relations consultants. And under the shtick that they come in and make things better between the company and their employees. They're hired when union activity and when workers are organizing and demanding things from their place of work. That is when union busters are hired. That is when labor relations consultants are hired.
Yo,
Um,
and what is their job when they come in to bust a union? How do they do that exactly?
It starts with now this is just from, you know, I'm going to take a couple different examples here. But for instance, where I worked, the way that it went, I was, you know, given this information from a manager who was subjected to different things than the rest of us employees were because managers cannot unionize. That's another topic we can touch on in a little bit. But
Yeah,
um,
we're gonna.
managers and people in a position of power within the company, you know, that can be assistant managers, key holders. It doesn't really need to go that far up to be in a position of authority, are all taken aside and they are grilled about every single person that works in that building. who's friends with who, what is their political affiliation, who hates who's married, who isn't married, are you gay, are you black, are you Indian, are your parents alive, are your grandparents alive,
Are
where,
they
like,
are
what
they
is
asking
your
those
upbringing?
are they asking those questions? Are you gay? Are you
Yes, that
Yeah.
is, so these questions are the goals for the labor relations consultants want to find this out about the staff. You're being profiled. Every single person will be profiled. Some a little bit deeper than others. It depends on how much of what they deem is a threat. I guarantee you, I was probed pretty hard. But what were we talking about? Oh yes.
What
So
Yeah, what's a threat? Exactly.
right, the people that are loud, the people that are speaking up, and the people that are visibly organizing. That is very threatening to them. So what these labor relations consultants do, they take your managers aside, the people that they need to brainwash into saying, okay, the union is not the way to go, and we are going to fight this. And this is how, you're going to have to present information when you're asked questions by the staff about the union. They give them responses. They train the shit out of management with one-liners, and to deflect worker questions and deflect real information and real answers. There is, again, the playbook and the script has been the same for a very long time. You're always going to hear, give us a chance. We're a startup. Sometimes it's we're a startup. That's what you're hearing a lot in cannabis. We're a startup. Give us a chance. Let's do this together. We don't want a third party coming in between us. That's another tagline that they want to use too. These things are grilled and hammered into management. So then when I go to my manager and I say, hey, if we had union representation, we could sit down and talk about how part-timers like myself don't get any sort of overtime or holiday pay. So I'm getting scheduled for every holiday, but I'm getting paid less than everybody else. And those questions are met with, we don't want a third party to come between us. But when these captive audience meetings are put together, they're put together after the management has been grilled on all of their employees, and they find out who doesn't like who is more likely to fight when they're in a room together. And those people are strategically put in rooms together. So then when propaganda is thrown in your face, which is what the union busting is when it comes to the captive audience meetings, it becomes divisive, and it ends up dividing your friendships. Or even if you're holding on, even if you don't agree with one another, you might not like each other, you still agree maybe on the fact that unionizing is the best way to go. That the goal for that is for them to break that apart. And I tell you, the meetings that I was into, it works. It works if you don't know what to expect.
So they're pitting your friends against you,
Yes, against each other. They're throwing a fucking grenade in it. They're closing the door and they're running the opposite way.
Oh.
They're plugging their ears, but they're looking in your direction, because it is about breaking you and your people down. 100%. It is making you really question what your needs are as an individual, and makes you question what you're capable of. And ultimately it gets to the point where their goal is to make you not believe that you are worth fighting for. And that is one of the hardest things to do as an organizer, which I do consider myself an organizer, is that convincing people that they are worth fighting for.
Hmm.
It's there's a self-worth issue with a lot of people in many industries in American labor. When you're told that you are not worth more than $15 an hour, that really gets to you psychologically. And so you start thinking, oh, well, what am I doing wrong? When it's a system that is screwing you. You can't get by. You can't save for a house in the suburbs on $15 an hour. No fucking place in the world can you do that unless you're doing it with a bunch of other people. It just isn't, it's not possible. And in this economy, it isn't.
No.
So
It
when
used
you,
to be
yeah, sure, used
50
to,
years 50 years ago.
right. When I worked at News Standard, they gave us, it was, I don't know, maybe a month or two before I was fired. Um, my manager called and she's like, I wanted to call you to inform you that, the company has awarded you with a raise. You've been here for, we were open for like 10 months or whatever at that point, and maybe it was coming up on a year even, regardless. And I was like, oh, interesting. It was a raise of 45 cents,
Hey,
which is fucking nothing. And
hey,
I'm like, Nicole, I'm like, 1938 called. They want their fucking savings account back. Are you kidding me? That is insulting. That is insulting after everything that people, but regardless.
no.
It is, the hardest part is really convincing people that they are worth fighting for, and that, yeah, if you, when you organize with your coworkers, and if you go for unionizing, if that is the route that you decide to take, expect a lot of pushback. But the thing is, this podcast is out there now. There is a lot more information about what union busting is and what to expect than there was 2 or 3 years ago. I'm living proof of that because there was none of this shit out there. If I knew now what I knew then, there would have been a different approach. I would have taken a different
I'd
approach.
like to quote Rod Stewart. I wish that I knew what I know now. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, for real.
But
It is a Captain
I
Hindsight
saw
thing.
some of that in Massachusetts as well. It seems like True Leave was doing some of that. And
Yes, absolutely. Almost every company will do that. Almost every company will do that. Now, there are smaller companies. There's one up here in Michigan, around in this area. I forget what municipality it is, but it is a dispensary where the bud tenders. There might have been like 8 or 10 of them. Came to the company and said, we want to unionize. And now every company has the choice to either say, you know what? Yeah, okay. This is your guys' decision, and we will sit down and work together. Let's go to the bargaining table. At that point, you don't have to have a vote. However, they can say, well, we don't recognize you. So now that's when that 30-day clock starts and you have to have a vote. But every business has the option to recognize the staff and recognize the staff's want and need to be recognized for a collective bargaining agreement. Oftentimes they won't, though, and that's how you end up in this situation with union busting.
can you tell us, for some of my viewers, what a collective bargaining agreement is? And also,
Yes.
yeah, and also for me, because I'm one of my viewers.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely, and thank you for stopping me to
Yeah.
define these things. It's important. I
Thank
forget.
you. Thank you,
Um,
Stacey.
But yeah, so a collective bargaining agreement is when you and your coworkers come together, and you guys have a contract with your place of work, with the business that you work for, in regards to the stipulations of your pay, the work environment, safety conditions, just generally, what you want out of your place of work, to make it mutually beneficial, right? Let's say you negotiate for a raise every year at the tune of 6% or 10% or something, or $1, whatever it might be. Those types of things is what goes into a collective bargaining agreement. You are collectively coming together and you are going and bargaining with your employer about the things that you and your coworkers need to survive and do
Can
your jobs
can I
appropriately.
ask you? Can I ask you why would someone object to a collective bargaining agreement?
Because they don't want to put money in the hands of the workers. There is, okay, so they also look at it and say, well, this is going to cost us too much money. We can't afford to pay you guys what you are asking for. We don't have it in our account. We don't have it, right? Is the main gist. But what that also means is that, and this is my opinion, is that they would rather put their money into a union buster, which costs a lot of fucking money, and whatever else around separating that, because they don't want to put money into a lower class. It is about keeping people in their place. This is a class system, although we don't talk about it, it is. And it would behoove them. And I experienced this when I was fired I was fired from the dispensary, and they said, well, it was because of attendance, but nothing checked out. I didn't violate any of the attendance the way that they claimed I did. And so finally they said, you know what, Stacey, this is a right to work state, or an at-will work state, and we can terminate your employment for anything we want. I said, okay, cool. See you bitches in court. So I filed a charge with the National Labor Relations Board for wrongful termination.
No shit.
And that was very eye-opening. And the NLRB, the National Labor Relations Board, found in my favor. And it was because it was actually 3 days after John Oliver. Are you familiar with John Oliver? Last Week Tonight with John Oliver. I love him. He did an episode all about union busting. And less than 3 days after that episode aired, I got a call from the NLRB out of Washington, D.C., saying that they found in my favor. Because one of the main things that in at-will states, especially for when there's union busting and they want to get rid of people that are, have loud mouths, they use attendance as the excuse. It's always attendance. You got to watch that bit with John Oliver. It really explains this a lot better than I will. But these are very real things that occur when you are unionizing. It was illegal for them to do, and we handled things appropriately. But there's a lot of different ways that people are being exploited, and workers are being exploited. And the sooner we are getting this message out there and allowing people to really kind of stew on this information, the better we're going to be. Because chances are, there are people listening, or there are people that are watching that were fired for speaking up and not realizing that they were fired for speaking up. And that is absolutely not okay.
And there's a lot of people that were fired then spoke up.
Yeah. And there's that too. So there is this, when I was going through, my case and everything, the company would rather put money and give a lot of money to a lawyer to fight their workers than give their money to the workers.
Why do you think that is, Stacey?
Because we're in a class system. Because it is about they don't want to give us the opportunity to move up. That's my thought on it anyway. I don't see any other explanation after the experiences that I've had and what I continue to learn about this industry and about labor relations in America, is that this is definitely about, we're seeing it happen at a much larger scale in America right now, where wages are very stagnant. This bullshit claim of people not wanting to work, false fucking narrative that has been regurgitated for over 100 years.
I agree with you.
Is that there is not working in America is no longer mutually beneficial. This is supposed to be a symbiotic relationship. I do work for you, you give me money and other benefits so I can fucking live outside of work. That is not happening at a balanced scale at all. So people are like, fuck it. If I'm going to struggle, I'm going to struggle on my own terms. I'm not going to struggle on your terms. And that's why you're seeing the rise of gig work, because it's easier for people to be like, you know what? I now have a life. Like, I can now pick up my daughter from school every day because I can go out and do Instacart at night. There's this quality of life balance that is really being left out of the picture on purpose, big time on purpose.
And I see they're talking now about, what about a 4-day work week? How do you feel about a 4-day work week, Stacey?
I think that's a fan-fucking-tastic idea,
Mhm.
and we should have been doing this shit a long time ago. People are, well, productivity. Yeah, everybody's bored and underpaid. And I'm not saying, obviously there are people that are wealthy and are doing great and are very happy with their jobs, but there's a large portion of people that aren't. And if you're in the percentage of 40% of people hating what they're doing for a living, and not wanting to go to work, we have a big problem that needs to be addressed.
Yeah, yeah, I agree with that. Yeah,
you know
it seems like we don't need that at this point. We could do better, I think.
Yeah, yes, we can, and cannabis can do better. And that is one of like the main reasons that I couldn't sit there and just listen to the podcasts about doing stuff anymore. It was like, this is it. It is at our fucking doorstep at this point. This is a brand new industry. How many years is it like in between new industries, right? What was the last one? Silicon Valley,
That's exactly what I was saying. It was like
right?
the
Which
tech
is
world.
also a shit show with a lot of people. You have the gaming
A
industry where
lot of
people are
people,
trying to unionize.
a lot of people
It's
lost money in the fucking tech boom as well. Yeah,
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 for sure.
exactly. And
Yeah.
this cannabis industry is being partially modeled on the tech boom, which is failing in its own right. So it's like slapping turds on top of more turds, and it's going nowhere, dude. It's a giant douche and a turd sandwich combined.
Wow, wow, a South Park reference. Word,
All day. It's my
word to
favorite show
South Park.
ever.
Yeah, yeah.
Ever.
Mm. Even though Michigan seems to have one of the best programs in the United States, even and I don't want to say, like, in the words of my favorite comedian Doug Stanhope, it's like being the hottest Denny's waitress doesn't mean you're good.
Right, right, right. Michigan, compared to other states, we absolutely have a lot of, more to work with here, as consumers and just as citizens. You to, and I don't want to say ability either, because we shouldn't. There should be like no policing of growing anything. So I really want to try to change my language when it comes to being allowed. But we are growing cannabis here in Michigan recreationally. If you're over the age of 21, you're allowed to have up to 12 plants. Anybody over the age of 21, you can grow 12 plants. That's fucking awesome. There's a couple stipulations around it. Make sure that it's out of eye's view from your neighbor. But also, we have our caregiver patient program here, which is, it's a totally separate program from the medical and recreational license side. This is its own little thing, where you can get your caregiver card or your patient card, which I have both, and you can go to medical dispensaries, or you can find a caregiver, and that caregiver can grow specifically for their patient, grow what they need, and make the things that they need, which is huge. A very good friend of mine has stage 4 colon cancer right now. He's in his early 40s, and if it wasn't for this caregiver system, he wouldn't have the medication that he has right now. This caregiver system was able to, and I mean, people are giving it away. Like, this isn't people charging for medicine. This is a network of people who, the outpouring has been amazing around what caregivers do for, sick cancer patients. It's really incredible. Everything has been given to him. I mean, I'm talking like he's on 1.5 grams of RSO a day. And that is all donated by caregivers who are making this with their small craft grown product. I don't trust RSO that comes out of a fucking dispensary. It's not supposed to be clear. I don't trust your shit. I wouldn't give it to my friends and I wouldn't give it to my family, especially if they're sick. And there's something very wrong with that. We need access, real safe access. And which we do have here in Michigan with our caregiver program. However, large corporate cannabis has been lobbying to get that taken away in several different avenues, and they will not stop. They will not stop. But for now, we have it, and we're fighting to keep it there because the having the ability to just grow your own plants and be self-sustainable in a very wild world, in a very wild economy, is so vital. Why would you keep anybody from doing that?
Can I ask you about a couple of Michigan organizations here?
Yeah.
One is called the Michigan Cannabis Industry Association.
Yeah. So that's the MICIA?
Yeah,
Correct.
I believe so. Yeah.
Yep, that is headed by a woman named Robin Schneider. If you don't know who Robin Schneider is, look her up. She's got one hell of an interesting story. Victim of the war on drugs, like very interesting background. And it is the largest trade organization for cannabis businesses here in Michigan. They represent over like 350, 400 businesses. And, they do lobby on behalf of, the businesses, the cannabis businesses of the state of Michigan, but they also lobby conscientiously too. So, for instance, there were several House bills that were being pushed by another organization that's the bad guys. And those guys were the MCMA, Michigan Cannabis Manufacturers Association, which has since become
that's on my list too.
Yes. So there's a correlation, right? So the MCMA had written several bills, House Bills 5300 through 5302, and those that were tie barred. There were like 6 bills tie barred to it. And what it would have done, or what they would have done, was completely gut the caregiver system, completely gut it. It would reduce a caregiver from being able to have 5 patients down to 1. You would be able to, instead of growing 72 plants, you could grow like 24. It was fucked. They gave no option for those people that were already patients to go find other caregivers. It would just completely put 80% of people that relied on caregivers for their medicine into a marketplace that doesn't have their best interests at heart. But the MICIA actively fought and endorsed against that. Endorsed all of the businesses involved with the MICIA said, this is bullshit. Some of us come from the caregiver realm, our legacy growers, if you will, and that just won't fly. So the MICIA has done some really solid work. There's always going to be qualms with how everybody kind of does their bidding, but I don't have any issues with the MICIA, and I think that there's a lot of really good businesses that are being helped and held up because of the MICIA's ability to do so. There are some businesses that are a part of the association that are thriving, and there are some that are really struggling. So I think that the MICA is doing the best that they can with the insane market that we're dealing with right now. Dude, I got to open up a window. It is boiling in here. Yeah, so 1 second. Yeah. It finally got hot in Michigan.
That's good. That's global warming.
Sweet air.
It's global warming taking effect in Michigan, folks.
For real. It was like 43 degrees last week. Like, kiss my ass. It's 83 today. I don't know how to dress myself anymore.
Something I got in my notes here is something about the Sparrow Social Equity Fund.
I'm not particularly as up to date on what exactly is going on with that right now. So I don't want to really throw anything out there that I'm not 100% sure about. I know that Sparrow Consulting, I believe, works with the MICIA, but I'm not entirely sure. I know that there was some kind of connection where if you were to be able, or if you were to hire them, that you would somehow get money from the social equity fund. I don't know how that would work.
Is that like
I
a
don't know how
state?
social equity fund works in this state or any states at
Yeah,
all.
I was gonna say, because like in Vermont, it's very confusing, like how the social equity fund works, because it seems like $700,000 just vanished out of thin air.
Right. So
eh,
right. And I mean, the thing is there's a lot of questions that do need to be addressed. And not just to call out like this one particular consulting firm, because that's how
well, no,
all of this shit is being done. It's a
that's just
lot
the
of
only one.
consulting firms
That's
that
just
are
the only one I heard of. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to. I
right.
didn't
No,
mean to
no, no,
say
no.
yeah.
No, 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 not at all. Not at all. Sparrow Consulting works with, some of these larger entities as far as I'm aware, but I don't know how these social equity funds work. How would a consulting company be able to guarantee or make sure a business or a potential license holder gets funds from a social equity fund? How does a consulting company have any control over that? That's where I don't understand. That's where it doesn't. I don't see where the connect is. How are they able to do that? Because there are other companies that we see, or other consulting companies that are doing that in other states, where it's, oh, hey, come and use us for your services, and we'll make sure that you get this $25,000 from the social equity fund. Where it's like, how are you able to guarantee that? What kind of connection do you have, and what kind of system do we have set up for social equity that a private entity can guarantee another potential private entity money out of it? I don't know. I don't know, but I would love some answers to these questions.
That's a great point,
And
Stacey.
I'm going to be in Washington, D.C. next week.
Yo,
Um,
don't spoil that. I'm saving that for the end,
oh my
Stacey.
God. Okay, then we'll talk about that at the end.
We're almost there.
Okay.
I'm running out of shit. There was a couple more things I wanted to ask about. One was Jaden's Law. Do you know
Oh,
anything about Jaden's Law?
yes, Jaden's Law. So that was written. I forget what Congress, which one of our legislators helped Amy write it, but Amy Carter is an activist. She also ran for the district representative up in the 62nd district here in Michigan, and came in second. But her son Jaden was diagnosed with autism, behavioral spectral disorder. There's like a list, and I'm sorry if I'm leaving a few out. At a young age, he was very violent. Amy was covered in bruises from him to no fault of his own. It was the disorder that he was dealing with. She actually went and took him on Dr. Phil. Um,
Oh
and
shit.
because she had started to give him like CBD and found that marijuana, or I'm sorry, cannabis, in these small doses, in these very particular ratios, gave this kid a life. And not only just gave him a life, but this motherfucker, who's now 16 years old, just spoke at Hash Bash this year. This
Yeah,
kid
that
didn't have any
I meant to ask
auditory
you.
functions.
Sorry,
He
that was
didn't
one thing I meant to ask you about. And yeah, go ahead.
Right. No, like this kid was, he didn't have, the ability to really speak or communicate properly, and now he's up on the steps at the Diag in Ann Arbor, Michigan on the U of M campus talking about how his mom was told that there's no way she could keep custody out of him because he was a lost cause. And now here this kid is strong as fuck, and like cannabis gave him the life that he deserved. And all it is just this little bit. Now, what Jaden's Law is currently here in the state of Michigan, pediatric cannabis patients, there are just under 300, I believe it's something like 293 pediatric patients here in the state of Michigan. There is a lot of stipulations about who can give them their cannabis medication and where they can consume it. Specifically, they cannot, in order for them to be able to take their medication throughout the day, and if they go to a traditional school, they cannot take that medication on school grounds. The only person that can give them and administer that medication has to be their parent or guardian. Okay. Now, most of the time, with the disorders that cannabis and all of its derivatives are used for, behavioral disorders, it is not easy for a parent to maintain a regular job and also have to go to their child's school maybe sometimes 2 to 3 times a day, pull that child 1,000 feet from where the school is. They can't be on school property. They have to be 1,000 feet off of the property, give them their medication, and send them back in. If your kid's having a bad day, maybe they're getting older and now like social norms are coming into play. Maybe you're going to start getting made fun of because your mom has to pull you out of school 3 times a day. There's all of these things that are coming into play. But it's also making it very, very difficult for that parent or guardian to have any semblance of a normal life or be able to support their family or their child to hold on to a regular job. So what Jaden's Law would do would allow the school nurse or, a delegated official, at the child's school to give them their medication while they're there so they don't have to leave the campus, so they don't have to walk off school grounds, so they can walk down to the office, pop a pill in their mouth, and walk to class.
Oh, okay, cool.
And it's essential because it's really,
it seems reasonable with all the other drugs that they feed children.
Yeah, right. Exactly. Here's your Adderall, but no, we can't give your kids CBD. Come on, give me a break. Give me a break.
Yep. I'm getting towards the end here, Stacey. I got a couple more notes here. One of them was out about the NCIA lobbying or something. This was your shameless end of the show stuff about going to DC, and
yeah.
you kind of jumped the gun, but I want to give you a minute to tell us about that, please.
Right, appreciate you.
Or like 10 or 15. I don't care.
Hey, however, I could talk all fucking day, as you can tell.
I know.
Like when you and I, our first conversation, we talked for like 3.5 hours. It's like, okay, I'm gonna die in this chair if one of us because we could just talk all day. Like I love having conversations with like-minded people. But so I've been very honored and humbled and lucky to have received a scholarship from Americans for Safe Access, which I am on the board of our chapter here in Michigan. We won Chapter of the Year for 2022.
Can you tell us what that is?
Well, yeah, Americans for Safe Access has been around for like 21 years. They're a nonprofit organization that has any state that has medical in it. Americans for Safe Access has been there and is one of the main reasons that we have medical access in the places that we do. Every year they come out with an incredibly extensive, super informative state of the states report, which every state that has legal cannabis in any way, shape, or form is judged on like 180 different criteria. And these criteria are everything from, lab training to, municipality cooperation, all these different things, right? And it boils down to, do cannabis patients have safe access to cannabis as medicine in whatever state it is? Michigan, I feel like we got it was either maybe got a C or a B. I should probably know that off the top of my head, but regardless, every year they do an essential advocate lobby day, and through donations and affiliations with cannabis companies and other nonprofits, they're able to send patients and some advocates to Washington, D.C. to go and talk with a bunch of our congressional lawmakers about patients and about, our access to cannabis and its use as medicine. So I have been, selected to be one of the people to be able to go. Anybody could go to, by the way. You can show up. Everything is kind of put together. So I will be in meetings with a bunch of different, congressional leaders come next week. And those meetings are set up, prior. But I'm going to be staying in the ASA Airbnb. With some people that have been doing this for a really long time, it is going to be an experience that I'm going to learn a fuck ton from. And only going to come out of this a lot stronger and with a lot more tools to be able to conquer in the areas where, we need it. So the ASA conference butts up with the NCIA conference, which is the National Cannabis Industry Association. And that is, all the brands, all of the legal licensed cannabis companies in the US, most of them are members of the NCIA. And this is the opportunity for those businesses to either send people on their behalf or, send people from their business to DC to go and talk to our lawmakers about what matters in cannabis as a business owner.
Have you been to DC before, Stacey?
No, I have not. So this is going to be super sick. Now I lived out on the East Coast for a while. I love the East Coast so fucking much. There's definitely a few people that I know in DC that I'm excited to meet up with that I haven't seen in a really long time. But it's going to be a really solid experience, and not just from the patient aspect, but from the business aspect. Because personally, I want to see businesses thrive. I want to see people within those businesses thrive. These two things don't have to be knocking heads with each other. It is going to be a great opportunity to talk to, business owners, cannabis business owners around the country about what's really setting them back and what is keeping them from being able to do the things that they need to do, legislatively. There's going to be good conversations about labor too. If there's, I hope to be in a room with some people that might not want to be in a room with me, but
hey, that's what I hope every day.
Right. Yes. So, we're gluttons for punishment. So, but the NCIA and ASA conferences are going to be really great opportunities to expand, what we're all trying to do in this advocacy realm, which is just really create some symbiosis and, stop the fuckery and push against the people, just
the fuckery.
just don't treat us like shit. It's obvious what's happening. You know what I mean? Just stop treating people like shit and everybody can kumbaya, stop trying to, systematically screw us all over. It's
when I run for president, that's going to be my slogan. Stop the fuckery.
Yeah, there we go. Perfect. I want that shit on a bumper sticker. Teskey Watrobski, stop the fuckery. 2026.
That sounds, it sounds too Polish to win it.
I'll stay in the background. Okay. I'll be your shadow government.
I'll change my name to Russell. That's my mom. Hey, well, Russell Watrobski. All right. Stacey, I'm at the end here. I did all the questions I have. At the end of every show, I always like to give the guests the last word. If we missed anything or if there's any shameless plugs or shout outs that you have, now would be the time for that. I want to thank you for your time here. It's been fascinating talking to you and getting to know you as well. Yo, I hope we could do this again sometime, but take it away.
Thank you, my friend. It's been great getting to know you as well. This community, especially, how we've been branching out online and really connecting, other states has been eye-opening, and, finding all these similarities and making all these connections has been, really, really fruitful. And, we're only getting started. So, shameless plug, my website, www.cannabisworkersresource.com. We continue to roll out features. I am not a web person. However, my web person is. So I didn't realize all the work that goes into launching.
I forgot that. Would you tell people about that? I'm sorry. That was in my notes. I totally forgot that, but that was super cool. And yeah,
totally.
Yeah. Sorry.
No, it's all good, man. It's all good. I definitely went on a tangent there for a little while. So, but yeah, so Cannabis Workers Resource, we launched it on April 1st. It is a culmination of what I have kind of found to be what's missing in certain sectors of the cannabis industry that I think where a lot of our problems are coming from come from the labor side and the lack of education, and that isn't just education on the behalf of the worker learning about what products, but it's also learning about your rights in the workplace, and really paying attention to your surroundings and realizing that there are not a lot of people are being informed of what their rights are in the workplace. And when you're working in a manufacturing facility like cultivation, there's a lot of laws that these businesses should be abiding by that most of them are not. Some of that is being done because it has slipped through the cracks and they really didn't realize that they needed to comply with these certain things. And in other situations, it is done purely systematically because they don't care and they know they can get away with it. So if you go to cannabisworkersresource.com, there's going to be a clickable map. The clickable map, anywhere in the United States, you can click on your state, Massachusetts. And for Massachusetts, there's going to be about 14 different links. Every state is going to have a direct, this was what took me like the longest time, was pulling these very direct links to where you go to file within your state for unemployment, for a harassment discrimination complaint, for a civil rights complaint, for
What
wage
about
and hour complaints,
OSHA
pesticide,
violations?
illegal use of pesticides, OSHA filings, what your state's cannabis governing body is. All of these things will be right there in that same place. Very soon, hopefully by the end of this week, our job journeys are going to be launching. And the goal of the job journey is I wish I had this when I started in the industry. And it's just a basic way for a bud tender or people working in the retail realm of cannabis, a grow tech or people working in cultivation, or a lab tech or people working in processing. They can go and there's a series of links of already existing material that I've found online that can give you a basis of how to do your job. And you'll be able to understand what the products are in the retail setting. You'll be able to understand what to protect yourself from in processing, right? You're using all kinds of different solvents. A lot of times you're not being told that you need to maybe have a fit tested respirator, that you should be wearing certain clothing, and here's what this particular solvent does to the plant. All of these things that I wish that I was taught at the beginning. Here's the basis for it. So you can go in to work and you can have a basic understanding of what you're supposed to be doing. I found that most places,
nice.
workers, they're not teaching you. They're not teaching people what they should be doing. It is, here you go. Here's your employee number. Have at it, Hoss. And we're running into a lot of problems. That's how you end up with mold in grows. Is by having a bad environment and not teaching people what to look for and what not to do, not providing, scrubs to change into for your workers at a cultivation facility. Oh, you have an issue with pests? Maybe you should be having people wearing specific clothing that you have only at that destination. Basic shit that, we should all know if we're going to be in this industry. So those job journeys will hopefully help. And this is all free. Everything is free. And education shouldn't be gate kept. None of this should be gate kept. This is, for anybody that is looking to just kind of figure out where they are in the industry, if they're feeling lost and if they're not getting, the education that they need from their employer, here's some supplemental shit for you to get you by right now. And always a place to come back to if you need to. And for business owners too, so there's a whole hub which has yet to launch or has yet to roll out specifically for the small business owner. So they can look at things like compliance. And, for instance, there is a company that does, a mobile company that does mask fit testing for certain industries. And cannabis is one of those industries. They'll come directly to your facility, your cultivation facility, and fit test all of your workers right there. You know, these things we have access to these things. And sometimes business owners are so overwhelmed with all of the crazy shit they have to comply with that other stuff gets lost in the cracks. So
Can I ask you one more question? Because I just thought of one.
sure.
Yeah. Have you seen anything sketchy that you think should be changed or anything? I'm just curious, like to your observations, if there's anything like really weird that you've seen up where you're at.
As far
Oh no,
as
cultivation, testing, any of that kind of.
oh my God, everywhere. I mean, politically, like shit, with our lab testing issues that are going on over here, there's a company called Viridis that they have been, it's still ongoing. The litigation is still ongoing, but essentially they have kind of RICO'd the market, and they control about 72% of it. There's like 21 testing labs here in Michigan. For some reason, licensed cannabis companies, 72% of them choose to go to Viridis. Why? Well, Viridis uses some kind of method that is their own that provides a higher THC level than other methods that are being used. So they're controlling the market by inflating the THC prices through their own method. Last year, the CRA was investigating into this and decided to do it. It was done poorly. The whole thing was a shit show, and it still is. But they decided to do a recall because of this lab fraud testing. All of a sudden, one day they released a bulletin one morning, and they're like, all Viridis product from from both facilities must be recalled and taken off the market throughout the entire state. It was like 72% of the shit in our both medical and recreational licensed marketplace was unavailable for like, I don't even know how many days it made. Wow. It was insane. It was insane. There's still a lot more that's going on with that issue. Viridis has since gotten some kind of accreditation with their method from a particular like accreditation organization. And they apparently are the first in the nation to be accredited by this particular organization. I forget what that organization is called.
Number one.
But sure, right? But at the end of the day, it's the market is being controlled off of a litmus test of a THC content, which is a fucking terrible way to judge quality. It is not a judge of quality. It isn't a judge of anything. THC
THC content.
Right. So they're driving the market off of something that really doesn't fucking matter if you're doing it right.
Yeah.
And that, that isn't going to change until we get some real education out there. So part of what I have on my website is also educating bud tenders on why THC isn't a good litmus test for quality.
Tell us your website one more time, Stacey.
www.cannabisworkersresource.com.
Oh.
And you can also find me on Twitter and on Instagram.
I got your Twitter. Right yeah, I got it.
Appreciate you, Caleb. There's so much going on here. There's so much crazy shit going on here. I could talk about it all night. Everything from bribery to this RICO shit, which I sincerely hope that there's something.
We're gonna save that for the second part because I'm still looking into that. But
right. Oh, we got lots to talk about, my friend. Okay. For sure.
Stacey Watrobski, I'm going to call it right here. Thank you so much for joining me. And we're signing off. And as I always say, the devil is in the details, and the details are in the fine print. Thank you for joining me, Stacey.
Thank you so much. Appreciate you.
Yeah.